So this was big news today. Basically, Donald Trump saying, "You're fired, Jerry. It's time to go." Jerome Powell and Donald Trump have a very interesting, contentious relationship. I know this because every time I've ever talked about economic policy with Donald Trump, somehow the Fed comes up, including in my interviews with him. Like we'd always make news there because he could not stand that Jerry wouldn't move on interest rates. And he loves low interest rates. What real estate developer does not love low interest rates? And there are some headwinds, I've talked about them, that suggest we're going into some economic challenges ahead, and Donald Trump is probably perceiving those separate from the tariffs. Let's leave those alone, because I think that Jerry Powell is actually conflating. They've accused Donald Trump of conflating the tariffs and the deficits, and you get Jerome Powell out there conflating his sort of tariff situation and animosity perhaps for Donald Trump with how the economy is actually doing. Because the real numbers, I'll tell you what, the real numbers actually point to way lower inflation. Last two reports have signaled that. You look at oil prices, for goodness sakes, trading around $61 a barrel. We haven't seen that in ages. Certainly not under Biden. And you have egg prices coming down. Everything is suggesting that we have really low inflation, and you're seeing some evidence of some economic slowdown vis-a-vis some of the sort of real-time numbers. You heard me mention Vegas bookings the other day. Believe it or not, it's like one of the things that was sent out in Apollo, which is a great big deal hedge fund. Apollo Group was looking at how bookings had started to tank in late March. That's a real-time indicator. Conference bookings, for example, really starting to slow down. So all of this is real-time stuff, and Donald Trump is perceptive, right? Like he's got good instincts. He's noticing some of this stuff. And so, forgive me, this is, he just saw this morning, although he tweeted it before this came out, he saw this morning that probably the handwriting was on the wall. The EU was about to cut, the ECB was going to cut their interest rates. So that means what happens? That means the ECB is able to effectively depreciate their currency. When they depreciate their currency, it means that we can buy more stuff that, like, even if he puts a tariff on it, it doesn't matter as much because things are cheaper when they're priced in euros if they're depreciating their currency. And he's like, no, you can't do that. I want our stuff to be able to go overseas more cheaply. I have mixed feelings about it. You know that because I do like a strong dollar and I like strong dollar policy. But Donald Trump put this out today. He said the ECB is expected to cut rates for the 7th time. And sure enough, he was right. They cut it like, I don't know, an hour later. Sure enough, the ECB is like, yep, we're cutting. So this is the 7th time. And yet, too late, Jerome Powell of the Federal Reserve, who is always too late and too wrong, yesterday issued a report with another and yet typical complete mess. Oil prices are down. Groceries, even eggs, are down. And the USA is getting rich off tariffs. Well, we'll see what gets implemented. Too late, should have been lowered interest rates like the ECB long ago, but he should certainly lower them now. Powell's termination cannot come fast enough. Okay, so that's the big line. So people are interpreting this in different ways. Some people were like, see, he's not going to go AWOL. He's not going to fire him. We do have this sort of divide, if you would, between the Federal Reserve and the executive branch. And so you don't have to worry because he's just saying the termination, which is eventually down the road, cannot come fast enough. I do think they're trying to light some pep in his step, if you would, because apparently they're already interviewing for his replacement. Kevin Warsh is said to be top of the list. This came up in the meeting today. And mind you, again, Donald Trump wants him to move, and he's not wrong to want him to move. I'm always, that I'm on the side of making sure we have a strong dollar. And unless there's real evidence of inflation, or unless there's real evidence of a slowdown, I wouldn't suggest that the Fed would move. In fact, I was kind of going crazy over the last few years because the Fed couldn't help itself. It just kept printing and printing and printing and printing. I'm like, you guys are going to be dealing with massive inflation. And of course they were, right? Like 9-point-something%. Because you had Biden out there doing his thing, Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi doing their thing, and then of course you had Jerome with the printing press going all day long and all day, all night, all day. So that was a mistake. But these guys always make the mistake. They never move on time. They never move when they should. They always do something late, and then they have to do too much. This is a great example I want to show you. So, and this is by my friend Steve Moore. Steve Moore, a really smart economist. He's advised Donald Trump. I've known him for years. I love Steve. And he says, This was interesting. Trump now has good reason to fire Powell for cause immediately. Take a look at the commodities index, okay? So this is kind of a way to look at inflation right now. Commodities went way up when Biden was, as he calls it, adding $5 trillion in apoplectic times, $5 trillion to debt, and inflation skyrocketed to 9.1%. Well, we all do remember that. I remember that very vividly. And where was Jerry then? Jerome was like, oh, no, it's just, what was their word for it, you guys? Oh, they had that nifty word. Some kind of inflation, like, it was basically, there was a fancy word for temporary, that it would all work itself out. And I'm sitting there going, are you high? Like, come on. This is ridiculous. You cannot print this much money and not have the after effect. Even Larry Summers was on my side on that one. And yet they did it anyway. And I was like, why is he doing this? And now I'm looking at it and I'm like, why isn't he moving? Does he really hate Trump that much? Trump's the one that gave him the job, gosh darn it. Anyway, Donald Trump had a few things to say on Mr. Jerry Powell today, just moments ago.
On Jerome Powell, you said that the termination of Jerome Powell cannot come fast enough. He says he won't leave, even if you ask him to.
Oh, he'll leave. If I ask him to, he'll be out of there. But I don't think he's doing the job. He's too late, always too late, a little slow. And I'm not happy with him. I let him know it, and if I want him out, he'll be out of there real fast, believe me.
Yeah, how about that? He's making it clear he's still the one in charge. He's going to be out of there real fast if he so decides. Part of this started because Powell went on stage yesterday in Chicago at the Chicago Economic Club and made a big thing about we're so independent at the Federal Reserve, we do what we want to do. And yeah, that's kind of how it's set up, but you can't be reckless. You can't just create inflation. And then when we actually are nearing possible recession, and look, all the indicators suggest that. I looked at something again this morning on hedge fund managers and what they see happening, and nobody thinks this is going to end well. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, for reasons aside from the tariffs. The tariff sort of chaos and volatility is layered on to what was already going on, and that was already the perception of a slowdown in the U.S. economy. So why wouldn't you move, for goodness sakes, if you're Jerome Powell? Why wouldn't you? Unless it's just personal. And I think that's it. He just doesn't want to do it because Donald Trump wants him to do it. And that's the sticking point. And that's what we hear. This is his kind of FU to Donald Trump yesterday in Chicago. We are completely independent. Well, Donald Trump doesn't really entirely think so. Here we go.
Let me turn to Fed independence. You've reiterated that you intend to stay in office until the end of your term, and that certainly reassured many in financial markets. What are the levers the government or the legislature have to pressure the Fed? And should one worry about threats to the Fed's independence once you're gone?
So our independence is a matter of law. Congress has, in our statute, we're not removable except for cause. We serve very long terms, seemingly endless terms. So we're protected in the law. So, Congress could change that law, but I don't think there's any danger of that. Fed independence has pretty broad support across both political parties and in both sides of the Hill. So I think that's not a problem. There's a Supreme Court case people will have read, probably in today's Journal, at which the Supreme Court may decide whether independent agencies generally, whether their authorizing laws can contain a provision that prevents the president from firing members of a commission other than for cause. And that's a case that people are talking about a lot.
Okay, they're talking about it, but I'm going to go back to what my friend Steve said. There's good reason to fire Powell right now for cause. And the reason for this is because of some of the things that he said yesterday. And some of the things sort of suggested that the Fed is not going to step in. They're just not going to do anything. So if all HELL breaks loose, well, guess what? The Fed's going to sit on the sidelines and they're going to make us sit this one out like we've never had to sit anything out before. The whole too big to fail thing. For goodness sakes, the Federal Reserve has always been there propping up too much. But just because it's Donald Trump, just because you don't like his tariffs plan, you're not going to move, Jerry? Come on. That's really petty. Really, really, really petty. Now, I get, like, Donald Trump, maybe he shouldn't be going off about you to reporters, and he's always done that. So you just got to kind of get with the program, right, and recognize that it's him. But for you to sort of fire back with, well, you're not going to move because you don't want to look like you're being influenced by him, it has nothing to do with him and everything to do with the economic numbers. And if you guys would wake up and actually look at the real tea leaves in real time, maybe you'd get this right for a change. Yeah, I'm amazed at how sort of dense they are. I expect it from Janet Yellen, for goodness sakes. But Jerry Powell, like, works in the real world, and you'd think he'd be looking at real-time numbers and talking to people. You know what? They're not. You know my friend Neil Grossman, maybe I've had him on the show a few times. Brilliant guy, like, super duper, like, PhD and everything, plus a constitutional law degree, and he's, a mathematician and a scientist and physics person and all this kind of stuff. So brilliant guy, investor, and he said, he used to go, and I'll leave this member of the Federal Reserve nameless because I don't know, as I was entirely told this on record, but he would go in and he would meet with him every month, just because this member of the Federal Reserve kind of wanted to hear a different viewpoint. And Neil would go in and they'd have lunch or something, they'd hang out, and Neil kept telling him over and over and over again in summer of 2020, like, this thing, forgive me, in the, that's a Freudian slip, in 08, Neil kept saying to him, summer of 08, we got a big problem, okay? This is right before the fall when Lehman Brothers went out, and this is not contained. And this member of the Federal Reserve was like, no, we contain Bear Stearns, like, no, it's all going to be fine. And Neil would bring in real-time indicators to him. And he's like, look at this, look at this, look at this. And the guy's like, no, it's all contained. Why? Because they're academic, wonky eggheads that don't have their heads in reality. So you've got Jerome Powell refusing to admit what's really going on. Well, guess what? Donald Trump's telling the truth, and inflation is down. So if your economy is suffering or stumbling at all and inflation is lower, why wouldn't you want to move?
On Jerome Powell, you said that the termination of Jerome Powell cannot come fast enough. He says he won't leave, even if you ask him to.
Oh, he'll leave. If I ask him to, he'll be out of there. But I don't think he's doing the job. He's too late, always too late, a little slow, and I'm not happy with him. I let him know it, and
it may be happening. Here's the bite I wanted to show you on inflation. Donald Trump saying, you know what? It's under control. Jerry, wake up.
You did say that you are confident these deals will be done, but you also said that you're in no rush. Americans are seeing prices rise. They're seeing it on their bills. How long can they expect that pain to last?
So they've already seen it get much better, because if you were truthful, which you're not, I know you very well, you have gasoline that hit $1.98 yesterday in a couple of states. You have gasoline's way down. The price of oil has dropped substantially. The price of groceries are substantially down. The price of eggs, when I came in, they hit me with eggs. I just got there. I was here for 1 week, and they started screaming at me, eggs have gone through the roof. I said, I just got here. I was there for 7 days, and I hear that eggs have gone through the roof before I got there. And they were screaming at me, the press, the fake news, like you're fake. And the fake news is screaming at me, like, about eggs. I said, I've only been here. This is my 7th day. And they were right. They went up 87%, and you couldn't get them. They said, you won't have eggs for Easter, which is coming up. Happy Easter, everybody. You won't have eggs for Easter. And we did an unbelievable job, and now eggs are all over the place, and the price went down 92%. And our Commissioner of Agriculture, Brooke, has done a fantastic job. Literally done a fantastic job. So prices haven't gone up. The only thing that's gone up, actually, is interest rates, because we have a Federal Reserve Chairman that is playing politics. Somebody that I've never been very fond of, actually. But he's playing politics. Interest rates should be down now. They should be coming down. In Europe, as you know, they reduced them, I guess 7 times. It looks like they're going to reduce them again and again and again. But our guy wants to play cute.
Our guy wants to play cute until maybe, he forces him out some way or another. Let me share with you what my friend Steve wrote this morning. Again, Steve is a very very, very smart economist, intellectual, capitalist who wants what's best for this country. He has served as an advisor to the president. He writes, anyone remember when the Federal Reserve's board was supposed to be politically independent? Oh, well, never mind. Powell's rant yesterday, this was in Chicago, part of what I just showed you, against Donald Trump and tariffs, warning of, quote, higher inflation and lower growth, sent the Dow tumbling by more than 500 points. This was arguably the most partisan tantrum by a Fed chair in modern times, attacking a new president's policies so aggressively and adding to market turmoil when the Fed's job is to calm markets. Instead, he screamed fire in a crowded movie theater. We are not fans of many of Trump's tariff strategies, Steve writes, but the idea that inflation is raging out of control is counterfactual. In other words, that's fake news. That's not true. Inflation's coming down, and you're going to sit there and tell us commodity prices are sky high when I'm looking at $61 on a barrel of oil? Give me a break. So far, he writes, commodity prices are lower than they were when Donald Trump entered office, and the latest inflation report showed consumer prices coming down. So when did we start playing politics? Oh, apparently when Donald Trump came in and you just didn't want to cut rates. And I get it. You don't want to do what he wants you to do. But he's looking around the world and he's looking at the headlines out of the ECB, and they're cutting and they're cutting and they're cutting. And guess what? It's going to make it harder for us. But maybe that's your goal, Jerry. Is that really it? I hope not. I certainly, I get fired up about this stuff, guys, because this is my background and I care. I care so much. And I hope you care as well. We put out a piece today at 76 Research all about this. I encourage you to go to 76 Research. We've got a whole thing about investing amidst all this volatility because it's really volatile. And then you get, they're swinging at the Federal Reserve, and the Fed chief is, blowing up on stage in Chicago and saying all kinds of things. It's wild. It's wild.